Happy Easter, everybody. Getting ready for a yoga flow.
Imagine being betrayed by your own brothers, sold into slavery, and then rising to become the second most powerful man in the world. That's the story of Joseph, a tale of divine providence. Imagine being betrayed by your own brothers, sold into slavery, and then rising to become the second most powerful man in the world. That's the story of Joseph, a tale of
Hello, and welcome to
resilience and
Yoga with
forgiveness.
Dogs.
Join us as we dive deep into one of the most captivating stories in the Bible. We'll uncover shocking details about Joseph's journey, his remarkable faith, and how his life was intricately woven into God's greater plan. Stick around, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring Bible stories that reveal truths you may have never known. Joseph's story begins in the book of Genesis, where he's introduced as the favored son of Jacob, also known as Israel. Jacob loved Joseph more than his other sons because Joseph was born to him in his old age and was the firstborn of his beloved wife, Rachel. This favoritism was made clear when Jacob gave Joseph a special robe, often called the coat of many colors. The robe became a symbol of Joseph's unique position in the family, and this sparked great tension between him and his brothers. While the robe was an outward sign of his favored status, the deeper source of the conflict lay in the special dream Joseph received from God. Joseph's brothers were already envious of his place in the family, but their resentment deepened when Joseph began sharing these dreams that suggested he would one day rule over them. In one dream, Joseph saw himself and his brothers binding sheaves of grain in the field, and suddenly his sheep stood upright, while the other sheep gathered around and bowed down to him. This dream implied that Joseph would rise to a position of authority over his brothers, which enraged him. The second dream was even more startling. Joseph dreamt that the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to him. This dream suggested that not only his brothers, but even his parents would one day bow to him. When he shared this with his family,
I can
his brothers'
already
jealousy turned to hatred. Even Jacob, though he loved Joseph dearly, rebuked him for the implications of the dream. But he also kept the matter in mind, recognizing that Joseph's dreams might have divine significance. The combination of Jacob's favoritism and Joseph's dreams set the stage for an explosive conflict. The brothers' anger reached a breaking point when Jacob sent Joseph to check on them as they tended to flocks in a distant field. They saw this as an opportunity to rid
Jordan
themselves of the
Peterson
brother they had come to
trying to
despise.
save the rest of the book.
When they saw him approaching from a distance, they plotted to kill him. However,
You won't get a spoil.
the elders
Oh, the New Testament for you,
and persuaded them not to
Mr.
take Joseph's life.
Hey, white people who wrestle with God,
They decided to throw
the
him
voice in your head
planning to leave him
is
there.
that
As they were deliberating, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passed by, heading to Egypt. Judah, another one of Joseph's brothers, suggested they sell Joseph to the traders instead of leaving him to die. His reasoning was that they could profit from getting rid of Joseph without shedding his blood. The brothers agreed, and for 20 pieces of silver, they sold Joseph into slavery, sending him on a journey that would dramatically change his life. To cover up their deed, they dipped Joseph's coat in goat's blood and brought it back to Jacob, leading their father to believe that his beloved son.
He makes real good decisions.
Jacob was devastated and mourned deeply for Joseph, refusing to be comforted. Meanwhile, Joseph was carried off to Egypt, where he was sold to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials. After being sold into slavery by his brothers, Joseph arrived in Egypt and was sold to Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Though Joseph's circumstances had drastically changed, God's favor remained with him. Despite Joseph excelled in
I can crack the entire.
because the Lord was with him, and Potiphar soon noticed this. Potiphar recognized that Joseph's success was due to God's blessing, and he placed him in charge of his entire household, giving him authority over all his possessions. Under Joseph's management, Potiphar's house flourished, as the blessing of God extended to everything Joseph touched. However, Joseph's trials were far from over. Potiphar's wife took notice of Joseph, who was described as well-built and handsome. She repeatedly tried to seduce him. Man of integrity refused to advance him. His response was grounded in both his loyalty to Potiphar and his devotion to God. How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against Joseph recognized that any wrongdoing against Potiphar would also be an offense against God, and he steadfastly resisted temptation. Potiphar's wife, however,
And then you check all of it.
into Joseph's rejections. One day, when Joseph was working in the house, she grabbed him by his coat and demanded that he lie with her. Joseph fled, leaving his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. In her anger and humiliation, Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of trying to assault her. She showed the cloak as evidence and claimed that Joseph had attempted to force himself on her. But when she screamed, he ran away. Potiphar was enraged when he heard his wife's accusation. Without investigating further, he had Joseph thrown into prison, a stark reversal of Joseph's earlier success. Once again, Joseph found himself in a dire situation through no fault of his own. But the narrative of Joseph's life demonstrates how God remained faithful to him through these trials. Even in prison, the Lord was with Joseph and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. Joseph's integrity and competence were recognized, and he was soon placed in charge of all the prisoners. Just as in Potiphar's house, everything Joseph did prospered, and the warden entrusted Joseph with significant responsibilities. While in prison, Joseph's life took another pivotal turn. Two of Pharaoh's officials, the cupbearer and the baker, were in prison, and they both had troubling dreams. Joseph, who learned the interpretation of dreams belongs to God, offered to interpret them. The cupbearer's dream foretold that he would be restored to his position, while the baker's dream revealed that he would be executed. Both interpretations proved accurate, and the cupbearer was indeed restored to his role as Pharaoh's servant. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him when he returned to Pharaoh's court, and to mention his unjust imprisonment. But the cupbearer forgot Joseph for 2 full years. During this time, Joseph remained in prison, waiting for God's timing. Little did he know that his ability to interpret dreams would soon lead to his dramatic rise to power. After 2 years of being forgotten in prison, Pharaoh had a series of dreams that troubled him deeply. He dreamed of 7 healthy cows being devoured by 7 gaunt cows, and 7 heads of healthy grain being swallowed up by 7 thin and scorched heads of grain. interpret the dreams, and Pharaoh grew increasingly anxious. It was at this point that the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph and informed Pharaoh of his ability to interpret dreams. Joseph was quickly brought from prison, cleaned up, and presented before Pharaoh. When Pharaoh recounted his dreams, Joseph humbly acknowledged that the ability to interpret them was not his own, but belonged to God. Joseph explained that both dreams had the same meaning. Egypt would experience 7 years of great abundance, followed by 7 years of severe famine. He advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise and discerning man to oversee the storage of surplus grain during the years of plenty, so that the country could survive the coming famine. Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph's wisdom and discernment that he appointed him as second in command over all of Egypt. Joseph, who had once been a slave and a prisoner, now found himself in a position of immense power, second only to Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh gave Joseph his signet ring, dressed him in fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck, symbolizing his authority. Joseph was tasked with overseeing the collection and storage of grain during the 7 years of abundance, preparing the nation for the famine that was to come. Joseph's rise to power was nothing short of miraculous, and it demonstrated God's providence in his life. Not only was Joseph able to save Egypt from disaster, but his position would also allow him to reconcile with his family in ways he could not have imagined. During the 7 years of plenty, Joseph worked diligently to store vast quantities of grain, as the land produced abundantly. When the famine eventually struck, it affected not only Egypt, but the surrounding nations as well. People from all over came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, as the famine was severe in every land. The famine even reached Canaan, where Joseph's family lived. Jacob, hearing that there was grain in Egypt, sent his sons, except for Benjamin, the youngest, to buy food. Unbeknownst to them, the brother they had sold into slavery years earlier was now the one in charge of Egypt's grain supply. Joseph's story was about to come full circle as God's plan for reconciliation and redemption unfolded. When Joseph's brothers arrived in Egypt to buy grain, they did not recognize him. Joseph, however, immediately knew who they were. Rather than revealing his identity, Joseph decided to test them to see if they had changed. He spoke to them harshly and accused them of being spies, despite their protests that they were simply hungry men from Canaan seeking food for their families. Joseph's tests began when he demanded that they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to prove they were telling the truth. He kept one of the brothers, Simeon, as a hostage and sent the others back to Canaan with sacks of grain, secretly returning the silver they had paid for the grain. When the brothers discovered the returned silver, they were terrified, fearing that they would be accused of theft. Back in Canaan, Jacob was devastated at the thought of sending Benjamin to Egypt, as he feared losing another son. Benjamin was the only remaining son of Jacob's beloved wife, Rachel, and Jacob could not bear the thought of harm befalling him. However, the famine persisted, and the family had no choice but to return to Egypt for more grain. Reluctantly, Jacob allowed Benjamin to go, entrusting his sons with gifts for the Egyptian official in the hope of finding favor. When the brothers arrived in Egypt with Benjamin, Joseph invited them to a feast.
That's not a television network that let you burn me? Not a reporter that'll let you burn me?
Joseph, moved by the sight of Benjamin, had to step away to weep privately. Yet, his tests were not over. After the meal, he ordered that his silver cup be hidden in Benjamin's sack of grain before sending them on their way. Soon after the brothers left, Joseph's steward chased them down and accused them of stealing the cup. When it was found in Benjamin's sack, the brothers were horrified. They returned to Joseph's house, pleading for mercy, with Judah offering to take Benjamin's place as a slave. This This act of self-sacrifice was a turning point for Joseph. He saw that his brothers were no longer the same men who had sold him into slavery. They had grown in integrity and love for their family. Unable to contain his emotions any longer, Joseph finally revealed his true identity to his brothers. He wept so loudly that even Pharaoh's household heard him. "I am Joseph," he said. "Is my father still alive?" His brothers were stunned and speechless, unable to believe that the man standing before them was their long-lost brother. Joseph quickly reassured him, telling them not to be distressed or angry with themselves for what they had done. He explained that God had sent him ahead of them to preserve their lives and save them from starvation. Rather than seeking revenge, Joseph saw God's purpose in every step of his journey. He embraced his brothers, wept with them, and instructed them to return to Canaan to bring their father and the rest of their family to Egypt. Pharaoh, hearing of Joseph's reunion with his brothers, offered them the best land in Egypt for their family to settle. Joseph sent his brothers back to Canaan with wagons and provisions. And when they told Jacob that Joseph was alive and ruler over all Egypt, Jacob was overwhelmed. He said, "I am convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." When Jacob arrived in Egypt, Joseph met him with tears of joy. It was a deeply emotional moment, the culmination of years of separation, pain, and uncertainty. Joseph introduced Jacob to Pharaoh, who welcomed Jacob and his family and gave them the best land in Egypt, the land of Goshen. The Israelites flourished in Egypt under Joseph's care. But Joseph's story didn't end with his family's reunion. As the family continued, the people of Egypt and surrounding nations came to Joseph to buy grain. When they ran out of money, Joseph allowed them to trade their livestock for food. When their livestock was gone, they offered their land, and finally, themselves as servants. Through Joseph's wise administration, Pharaoh gained control of nearly all the land and wealth of Egypt, solidifying his rule. Joseph's influence on Egypt and his role in saving not only his family, but entire nations cannot be overstated. His story is a testament to God's faithfulness and the power of forgiveness. Joseph's life illustrates that even in the darkest of circumstances, God is at work, weaving together a greater plan for good. As Joseph neared the end of his life, he made his family promise that when God eventually led them out of Egypt, they would take his bones with them. This prophetic request foreshadowed the Exodus and demonstrated Joseph's unwavering faith in God's promises. Joseph's story is one of the most powerful in the Bible, filled with lessons of faith, forgiveness, and divine providence. If you found this journey through his life as inspiring as we did, be sure to hit that subscribe button and share this story with others who need to hear it. Join us as we continue to uncover more incredible stories from the Bible, revealing the hidden truths and life-changing lessons they hold. Don't miss out. Subscribe now and stay connected to this amazing journey through the Word of God.
The walls of the grand Egyptian estate hid many secrets, but none as dangerous as the one she carried. Potiphar's wife had everything: wealth, power, and servants who obeyed her every word. Yet none of it was enough. Her desire had turned into an obsession, and that obsession had led to a single decision that would change everything. One moment of desperation, one lie, and now the fate of an innocent man hung in the balance. Potiphar's wife remains unnamed in the biblical account, but her role in Joseph's story is significant. She was the wife of Potiphar, an Egyptian officer who served as the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Genesis 39, verse 1. Potiphar was a man of high status, overseeing the royal bodyguards and carrying out the king's orders, making his household one of power and influence. Potiphar was an Egyptian officer who served as the captain of Pharaoh's guard, a position that placed him among the most powerful men in Egypt. His name, of Egyptian origin, likely meant "he whom Ra has given," a reference to the sun god Ra, who was widely worshipped in ancient Egypt. His authority extended beyond simple military duties. He was entrusted with protecting Pharaoh's life and enforcing the king's commands. This role required both loyalty and efficiency, making Potiphar a trusted member of Pharaoh's inner circle. As the captain of the guard, Potiphar held significant influence. The title given to him in Genesis 39:1, Sar HaTabam, can be translated as chief of the executioners or head of the royal bodyguard. His duties likely involved not only overseeing Pharaoh's personal security, but also handling high-profile prisoners, administering royal justice, and possibly leading military operations when necessary. Given his responsibilities, he had the power to determine the fate of individuals accused of crimes, including those who were imprisoned or sentenced to death. His authority was vast, and he was accustomed to absolute control over his household and subordinates. Wealth and status accompanied his position. As an elite officer in Pharaoh's court, Potiphar owned an extensive estate with many servants under his command. His household functioned almost like a miniature kingdom, where everything was managed under his supervision. When he purchased Joseph from the Ishmaelites, he saw potential in the young Hebrew slave and entrusted him with increasingly important responsibilities. Over time, Joseph's wisdom and administrative skills became evident, and Potiphar placed him in charge of everything he owned. The Bible states that because of Joseph, Potiphar's house prospered, and the only concern he had was the food he ate. Genesis 39:4-6. This demonstrates the level of trust he had in Joseph's abilities, as well as his understanding that a well-managed household was essential to maintaining his wealth and status. As for Potiphar's wife, she lived a life of luxury and privilege. She had wealth, servants, and authority over the affairs of the house. In ancient Egypt, noble women often had social standing, though they were expected to uphold their husband's honor. Her position would have allowed her to wield influence over those beneath her, including the slaves and workers in the household. Her life changed when Joseph, a young Hebrew slave, was brought into the house. Joseph had been sold by his brothers and later purchased by Potiphar from the Ishmaelites. Genesis 39:1. Over time, he gained Potiphar's trust and was placed in charge of the entire household, managing all that Potiphar owned. Genesis 39:4-6. The Bible notes that Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Genesis 39:6. Meaning he was not only physically attractive, but carried himself well. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, born to him by Rachel, his most beloved wife. Unlike Jacob's other children, who were born from Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah, Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel, making him highly favored in his father's eyes.
Knows me.
His birth was seen as a blessing,
And knows
to
they
Rachel
saw me.
had struggled with infertility for many years. Genesis 30:22-24. This favor became evident as Joseph grew up, as Jacob openly displayed his love for him above his other sons. The most symbolic expression of this favoritism was the coat of many colors that Jacob gifted to Joseph. Genesis 37:3. This extravagant gift set Joseph apart from his brothers and became a physical representation of Jacob's special
These would
affection.
be on his list.
Joseph's
Could
relationship
you not break any of
was
these?
strained from an early age. They saw how their father favored him, and their resentment only
You got dirt
deepened
on
when
these
Joseph
now.
began having prophetic dreams. In one dream, he saw sheaves of wheat in a field, with his brother's sheaves bowing down to his. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. Genesis 37:5-9. When he shared these dreams, his brothers interpreted them as a sign that he believed he would rule over them. Their jealousy turned into hatred, and they began to see Joseph as a threat rather than a brother. Even Jacob, though he loved Joseph, rebuked him for suggesting that even his parents would bow to him. The brothers' hatred reached its peak when Jacob sent Joseph to check on them while they were tending their father's flocks in Shechem. When they saw him approaching from a distance, they plotted to kill him, saying, "Here comes that dreamer. Genesis 37:19. However, Reuben, the eldest, convinced them not to shed blood, suggesting instead that they throw him into a pit, intending to rescue him later. After stripping Joseph of his robe, they cast him into an empty cistern. Genesis 37:23-24. As they sat down to eat, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passed by on their way to Egypt. Judah, seeing an opportunity for profit, proposed selling Joseph instead of leaving him to die. The brothers agreed and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. Genesis 37:26-28. To cover up their crime, they dipped Joseph's coat in goat's blood and presented it to Jacob, leading him to believe that Joseph had been devoured by a wild animal. Genesis 37:31-33. Devastated, Jacob mourned deeply, refusing to be comforted, believing his beloved son was dead. Meanwhile, Joseph was taken by the Ishmaelites to Egypt, where he was sold into slavery. Upon arrival, he was purchased by Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Genesis 39:1. Though Joseph had lost everything, his family, his status, and his freedom, he did not lose his faith in God. Potiphar's wife noticed him. She desired him. Day after day she pursued him, commanding him to lie with me. Genesis 39:7. This was not a one-time attempt. She repeatedly tried to Genesis 39:10. However, Joseph refused every time. He reminded her that he had been entrusted with everything in the house except for her, because she was Potiphar's wife. To betray that trust would not only be a sin against Potiphar, but also against God. Genesis 39:8-9. But Potiphar's wife was persistent. One day, when no one else was in the house, she caught Joseph by his garment and tried to force him to lie with her. Joseph fled, leaving his cloak in her hands as he ran outside. Genesis 39:11-12. Enraged and humiliated, she decided to take revenge. She called the servants and accused Joseph of trying to assault her, using the garment as proof. Genesis 39:13-15. When Potiphar returned, she repeated the lie, saying that Joseph had tried to take advantage of her but fled when she screamed. Genesis 39:16-18. After Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of attempting to assault her, Potiphar's reaction was swift and intense. The Bible states in Genesis 39:19 that when his master heard the words of his wife, saying, "This is the way your servant treated me," his anger was kindled. However, the text does not explicitly state whether his anger was directed solely at Joseph, or if he harbored doubts about his wife's claims. As the captain of Pharaoh's guard, Potiphar had the authority to immediately execute Joseph if he had truly believed his wife's accusations without question. Attempted assault, especially by a slave against a noblewoman, would have been a crime punishable by death in ancient Egypt. Given Potiphar's position, he would not have needed permission from Pharaoh to carry out some punishment. However, instead of sentencing Joseph to death, he chose to imprison him instead. The place where Joseph was taken was not a common dungeon, but a prison designated for royal prisoners. Genesis 39:20. This detail suggests that Joseph was not treated like an ordinary criminal, but was instead placed in a facility that housed those who had fallen out of favor with Pharaoh. This prison may have been directly under Potiphar's control, as later in Genesis 43, it is described as the house of the captain of the guard, further implying that Potiphar remained connected to the prison. While the Bible does not explicitly say why Potiphar spared Joseph's life, several factors could explain his decision. First, Joseph had been a highly trusted servant, and Potiphar had seen firsthand that everything Joseph managed prospered. If he had truly believed Joseph was guilty, immediate execution would have been the expected course of action. Second, there is the possibility that Potiphar doubted his wife's honesty, but, to maintain his household's reputation, had no choice but to take action against Joseph. A noblewoman's accusation against a slave would have carried significant weight, and doing nothing would have raised questions about Potiphar's authority and household control. Joseph's imprisonment, however, was not the end of his journey. Even in prison, the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. Genesis 39:21. He quickly gained favor with the prison keeper, just as he had with Potiphar. Eventually, Joseph was placed in charge of the other prisoners and ran the daily operations of the prison. This divine favor would later set the stage for Joseph's rise to power. As it was in this prison that he would meet Pharaoh's officials, the chief cupbearer and chief baker, who would play a key role in his future. During his time in prison, Joseph encountered two of Pharaoh's officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, who had been thrown into prison for offending Pharaoh. Genesis 41-3. These men were not ordinary prisoners. They had served in the royal court, and their roles were crucial. The cupbearer was responsible for tasting Pharaoh's wine to ensure it was not poisoned, while the baker prepared food for the king. Their imprisonment suggests that they had been accused of a serious offense, possibly an alleged plot against Pharaoh. One night, both men had troubling dreams, but did not understand their meanings. When Joseph saw them troubled the next morning, he asked why they were distressed. Genesis 40:6-7. They explained that they had each dreamed something unusual, but no one could interpret their dreams. Joseph responded by saying, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please." Genesis 40:8. The chief cupbearer spoke first. He described seeing a vine with 3 branches. The branches budded, blossomed, and bore ripe grapes. He took the grapes, pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Genesis 40:9-11. Joseph, through divine insight, interpreted the dream. The 3 branches represented 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh would restore the cupbearer to his former position, and he would once again serve the king. Genesis 40:12-13. Joseph then made a personal request. "When it goes well with you, please remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison." Genesis 40:14. He explained that he had been unjustly taken from his homeland and had done nothing to deserve imprisonment. Genesis 40:15. Encouraged by the positive interpretation, Chief Baker shared his dream. In his dream, he had 3 baskets of bread on his head, and birds were eating from the top basket. Genesis 40:16-17. Joseph's interpretation, however, was not favorable. The 3 baskets also represented 3 days, but instead of being restored, the baker would be executed. Pharaoh would have him hanged, and birds would eat his flesh. Genesis 40:18-19. 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, events unfolded exactly as Joseph had interpreted. The cupbearer was restored to his position, but the baker was executed. Genesis 40:20-22. Despite witnessing the accuracy of Joseph's interpretation, the cupbearer forgot about Joseph and did not mention him to Pharaoh. Genesis 40:23. Joseph remained in prison for 2 more years after this incident, still waiting for his chance to be freed. However, his time in prison was not wasted. It was a period of preparation, refining his character and deepening his trust in God. 2 years after the chief cupbearer was released from prison, Pharaoh had 2 troubling dreams that no one in his court could interpret. Genesis 41:1-8. In the first dream, he saw 7 healthy, well-fed cows grazing by the Nile. Suddenly, 7 thin, sickly cows emerged from the river and devoured the fat cows. In the second dream, 7 full, good ears of grain grew on a single stalk, but then 7 thin, scorched ears sprouted and swallowed up the healthy ones. Disturbed by these visions, Pharaoh called upon Egypt's magicians and wise men, but none could interpret the dreams. Genesis 41:8. It was at this moment that the chief cupbearer remembered Joseph. He told Pharaoh about a Hebrew prisoner who had correctly interpreted both his dream and the baker's dream 2 years earlier. Genesis 41:9-13. Pharaoh immediately summoned Joseph from prison. Joseph was quickly shaved, cleaned, and given new clothes before being brought before the king. Genesis 41:14. Standing before Pharaoh, Joseph was asked if he could interpret dreams. Joseph humbly replied, "It is not everything. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." Genesis 41:16. Pharaoh then recounted both dreams, and Joseph, through divine revelation, provided the interpretation. The 7 healthy cows and the 7 good ears of grain represented 7 years of abundance in Egypt. The 7 thin cows and 7 scorched ears of grain represented 7 years of severe famine that would follow. Genesis 41:25-31. The reason Pharaoh had 2 similar dreams was because God had firmly decided that these events would happen soon. Genesis 41:32. Joseph didn't stop at interpreting the dreams. He also offered Pharaoh a strategic plan to save Egypt from disaster. He advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise and discerning leader to oversee the collection and storage of grain during the 7 years of plenty, so there would be enough food to survive the 7 years of famine. Genesis 41:33-36. Pharaoh and his officials were impressed. Recognizing that God's spirit was in Joseph, Pharaoh declared, "Can we find anyone like this man in whom is the spirit of God?" Genesis 41:38. He then appointed Joseph as second in command over all of Egypt, giving him authority over the land and making him Pharaoh's chief administrator. Genesis 41:39-41. To solidify his new status, Pharaoh gave Joseph his signet ring, clothed him in fine linen, and placed a gold chain around his neck. He also gave him a royal chariot and ordered that people bow before him as he traveled through the land. Genesis 41:42-43. Furthermore, Pharaoh gave Joseph an Egyptian name, Zaphanath-Paneah, which likely meant God speaks and he lives, and arranged for him to marry Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. Genesis 41:45. At 30 years old, Joseph had gone from being a prisoner to the most powerful man in Egypt under Pharaoh. He spent the next 7 years organizing Egypt's food supply, collecting and storing grain in cities throughout the land. As the 7 years of abundance came to an end, famine struck the land just as Joseph had foretold. The famine was not limited to Egypt. It spread across many regions, including Canaan, where Joseph's family lived. Genesis 41:54-57. When Jacob and his sons realized their food supply was running out, Jacob heard that there was grain available in Egypt and sent his sons, except for Benjamin the youngest, to buy food. Genesis 42:1-4. When Joseph's brothers arrived in Egypt, they were brought before him to purchase grain. However, they did not recognize him. More than 20 years had passed since they had sold him into slavery, and now he was dressed as an Egyptian ruler, speaking through an interpreter. Genesis 42:6-8. But Joseph recognized them immediately. Instead of revealing his identity, he tested them to see if they had changed. Joseph accused them of being spies who had come to observe the land's weaknesses. The brothers, desperate to prove their innocence, explained that they were 12 brothers, the sons of one man in Canaan, but that one was no more, believed to be dead, and the youngest was at home with their father. Genesis 42:9-13. Joseph, still keeping his identity hidden, insisted that they must bring their youngest brother to prove their honesty. He imprisoned them for 3 days, then released them, but kept Simeon as a hostage until they returned with Benjamin. Genesis 42:14-20. Before they left, Joseph secretly returned their silver in their sacks. On their journey home, one of the brothers opened his sack and discovered the silver, causing them all to panic, thinking it was a trap. Genesis 42:25-28. When they arrived in Canaan, they told Jacob everything, but he refused to let Benjamin go, fearing that he would lose him as he had lost Joseph. Genesis 42:29-38. As the famine worsened, their food ran out, and they had no choice but to return to Egypt. Judah took responsibility for Benjamin's safety, promising Jacob that he would bring him back alive. Genesis 43:1-10. This time, the brothers brought double the silver and special gifts to appease the Egyptian official, still unaware that they were dealing with Joseph. Genesis 43:11-15. When Joseph saw Benjamin, his only full brother, he was overwhelmed with emotion and had to step aside to weep. Genesis 43:29-30. He invited them to a banquet at his house, where they were seated in birth order, something that astonished them because they did not know how he knew their ages. When food was served, Benjamin received 5 times more than the others, a test to see how the brothers would react. Genesis 43:31-34. Joseph devised one final test. He instructed his steward to plant his silver cup in Benjamin's sack, and then send men to accuse the brothers of theft after they left the city. Genesis 34:1-5. When the brothers were stopped and searched, the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, and they were horrified. They returned to Joseph's house, where Judah came forward and pleaded for Benjamin's life, offering himself as a slave instead. Genesis 44:16-34. This act of selflessness proved that the brothers had changed. At this moment, Joseph could no longer hold back his emotions. He ordered everyone except his brothers to leave the room. Then he wept so loudly that even the Egyptians outside heard him. He He finally revealed his identity, saying, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" Genesis 45, 1-3. The brothers were terrified and speechless, unable to comprehend that the brother they had sold into slavery was now the ruler of Egypt. Joseph reassured them, explaining that God had sent him ahead to preserve their lives. He did not seek revenge, but saw God's greater plan in all that had happened. "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good," he later told them. Genesis 50:20. He instructed them to return to Canaan and bring Jacob, their families, and all their belongings to Egypt, where they would be provided for during the remaining years of famine. Genesis 45:4-13. When Jacob heard the news, he was in disbelief. But after seeing the carts and provisions Joseph had sent, his spirit revived, and he exclaimed, "Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Genesis 45:25-28. Jacob and his entire family, 70 people in total, moved to Egypt. When Jacob and Joseph finally reunited, Joseph wept on his father's neck for a long time. Genesis 46:29. Pharaoh welcomed them and gave them the land of Goshen, where they would live and thrive. Genesis 47:5-6. Joseph continued to rule wisely over Egypt, ensuring that Pharaoh's storehouses provided food for the people. He remained loyal to both Egypt and his family, securing their survival during the famine. After Joseph was elevated to power in Egypt, Pharaoh gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of the fawn. Genesis 41:45. She was from an important Egyptian family. Azan, also called Heliopolis, was a major religious center where the sun god Ra was worshipped.
Somebody
During the 7
that
years
speaks
of abundance,
billionaire.
Asenath bore Joseph 2 sons. Genesis 41:52. The firstborn was named Manasseh,
Someone.
which means God has made you forget all my hardship and all my father's house.
Who could look at a
Genesis
basketball game?
51. This name reflected how Joseph had moved forward
And
from
the
his
bicycle.
past, his betrayal by his brothers, and the suffering he endured in slavery.
Just watch a few shows.
The second son was named
Because he watches TV.
God has made
And
me
he only
fruitful
watches
in
the
the land of
highlights
my
and wants to
affliction. Genesis 41:52.
And he can piece
This
it
name
together.
signified how, despite being sold
Just
to Egypt as a
watch.
slave, God had blessed him.
The
and made him
people who
successful.
watch, the people who watch,
Israel
the
died.
people
He
who cover
adopted Joseph's 2
his
sons
favorite
as his
game.
own, giving them
And he
equal
doesn't watch
status
anymore
with his
because he
other
doesn't
sons.
want.
Genesis 48:5. This was significant because it meant Manasseh and Ephraim would each receive a portion of the inheritance, effectively giving Joseph a double portion of the blessing, a privilege usually reserved for the firstborn son. When Jacob blessed them, he crossed his hands, placing his right hand, the hand of greater blessing, on Ephraim, the younger son, and his left hand on Manasseh, the firstborn. Genesis 48:13-14. Joseph tried to correct his father, but Jacob insisted, declaring that while Manasseh would also be great, Ephraim's descendants would become even greater. Genesis 48:19. This prophecy came true, as Ephraim's tribe became one of the most dominant tribes in Israel, often representing the entire northern kingdom. Manasseh's tribe was also large and influential, with land on both sides of the Jordan River when the Israelites entered the Promised Land. Joseph lived to see multiple generations of his family grow in Egypt. Before he died at the age of 110, he made his family swear that when God led them back to the Promised Land, they would take his bones with them. Genesis 50:22-26. Many years later, Moses fulfilled this request, carrying Joseph's bones out of Egypt during the Exodus. Exodus 13:19. Potiphar's last recorded action in the Bible was imprisoning Joseph. Genesis 39:20. After that, he disappears from the narrative. His wife is also never named, and the Bible does not say if she faced any consequences for falsely accusing Joseph. Some extra-biblical Jewish and Islamic traditions suggest different theories about what happened to Potiphar's wife, but these are not found in the Bible. Some later interpretations try to portray her as regretful, while others speculate that she and Potiphar faded into obscurity after Joseph's rise to power. However, these are only traditions and not biblical facts. So based on the Bible alone, Potiphar and his wife remain silent figures after Joseph's imprisonment, with no further information about their lives, children, or fate. Joseph's journey is a reminder that even when life seems unfair, God is still working. The trials we face today may be preparing us for something greater tomorrow. This story proves that what others meant for evil, God can turn for good. Genesis 50, verse 20. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the fate of Potiphar's wife and Joseph's incredible journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful biblical stories and insights. Stay connected as we explore more untold details of Scripture. See you in the next one.
Have you ever felt overlooked or unloved, living in the shadow of someone else's story? Leah, the forgotten matriarch of the Bible, knows that pain all too well. But what if I told you that it was Leah, not her more beloved sister Rachel, who played a crucial role in the lineage of Jesus Christ? Her story is one of unexpected redemption, divine purpose, and a legacy that changed the course of history. This is the story of Leah, the woman who was loved by God. Leah's story begins in the ancient land of Mesopotamia, in a household dominated by her cunning father, Laban. Leah was the elder sister of Rachel, both daughters of Laban, who was a master of deception. The Bible describes Leah as having weak eyes, which has been interpreted in various ways, but most likely means that her appearance was less striking compared to her younger sister, Rachel, who was known for her beauty. This difference in appearance set the stage for a lifetime of comparisons and emotional pain for Leah. Jacob, who had fled to Laban's household to escape his brother Esau's wrath, fell deeply in love with Rachel at first sight. He agreed to work for Laban for 7 years to earn Rachel's hand in marriage. Those 7 years, the Bible says, seemed like only a few days to Jacob because of his love for Rachel. Genesis 29:20. However, when the time came for the wedding, Laban deceived Jacob by substituting Leah for Rachel under the cover of darkness. When Jacob discovered the deception the next morning, he was furious. Laban's excuse was that it was not customary to marry off the younger daughter before the older one. Laban then offered Rachel to Jacob as well, on the condition that Jacob would work another 7 years for her. This arrangement left Leah in a heartbreaking position. She was now married to a man who did not love her and who had been tricked into marrying her. Leah's pain is palpable in the biblical narrative. She must have felt deeply unwanted and rejected, living in the shadow of her more beautiful and beloved sister. Yet, despite these difficult circumstances, Leah's life took a surprising turn, one that would have eternal significance. God, in his compassion, saw Leah's plight. Genesis 29:31 states, when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. This was a profound blessing in a culture where a woman's worth was often tied to her ability to bear children. Leah's fertility became her source of significance and hope. She bore Jacob 6 sons and a daughter, each of whom would play a significant role in the formation of the 12 tribes of Israel. Leah's first son was Reuben, whose name means seed, a son. Leah named him this because, as she said, it is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now. Genesis 29:32. Her second son was Simeon, meaning one who hears. For she said, because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too. Genesis 29:33. Her third son was named Levi, meaning attached, because she hoped that Jacob would become attached to her after the birth of 3 sons. Genesis 29:34. Despite her hopes, Jacob's heart remained with Rachel. Leah's story is one of unfulfilled longing and deep sorrow, yet it is also a story of God's faithfulness. While Leah might have felt rejected by her husband, God did not reject her. Instead, he blessed her in ways that would have profound implications for the future of Israel and the world. Leah's role as the mother of Jacob's children would not only secure her place in history, but also lay the foundation for a lineage that would lead to the birth of the Messiah. Leah's fourth son, Judah,
This one may be a
marked a
secret.
turning point in her life
Judah.
in the biblical narrative. With the birth of Judah, Leah's perspective began to shift. Up until this point, Leah's focus had been on winning Jacob's love through the birth of sons. Each of her first three sons was named in a way that reflected her sorrow and longing for her husband's affection. However, with Judah, Leah's focus turned toward God. When Leah gave birth to Judah, she said, "This time I will praise the Lord." Genesis 29:35. The name Judah means praise, and this name signified a significant change in Leah's heart. Instead of continuing to seek validation from Jacob, Leah chose to praise God for his blessings. This was a profound spiritual transformation for Leah, as she began to find her identity not in her husband's love, but in her relationship with God. Judah's birth was not only a turning point for Leah personally, but it also had far-reaching implications for the future of Israel and the world. Judah would become the ancestor of King David and ultimately of Jesus Christ. The fact that the Messiah would come from Leah's lineage is a surprising and powerful detail that highlights God's sovereignty and grace. Despite being the less favored wife, Leah became the mother of the tribe that would produce the Savior of the world. This shift in Leah's perspective from seeking human love to offering praise to God offers a powerful lesson in faith and contentment. Leah's story teaches us that true fulfillment comes not from the approval or love of others, but from our relationship with God. When Leah stopped striving for Jacob's affection and instead turned her heart toward God, she found peace and purpose. Leah's decision to praise God in the midst of her struggles had far-reaching consequences. Through Judah, Leah's legacy would be one of kingship and redemption. The tribe of Judah became one of the most prominent tribes in Israel, and the promises made to Abraham about his descendants being a blessing to all nations found their fulfillment in Leah's line. Leah's story reminds us that even in the midst of pain and rejection, God is at work in our lives. Her decision to praise God rather than focus on her difficulties transformed not only her own life, but also the history of Israel and the world. Leah's legacy is a testament to the power of faith and the importance of keeping our eyes on God, even when life doesn't go as we planned. Leah's role as the mother of 6 of Jacob's 12 sons places her at the very heart of the formation of the nation of Israel. Each of her sons will become the leader of a tribe, and together they will form the 12 tribes of Israel, which played a central role in the history of the Jewish people and in God's redemptive plan for humanity. Leah's first 3 sons, Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, each had their own unique destiny. But it was her fourth son, Judah, who carried the greatest significance in the biblical narrative. Judah's descendants will include King David and ultimately Jesus Christ. This detail is one of the most surprising aspects of Leah's story. The Messiah, the Savior of the world, would come from the line of the less favored rather than from Rachel, the beloved wife. Leah's firstborn was destined to be the leader of his brothers, but his actions later in life disqualified him from this role. He dishonored his father by sleeping with Bilhah, one of Jacob's concubines, and as a result, he lost his birthright. This is a shocking detail that many people overlook when reading the Bible. The firstborn son
Excuse me, sir. I need you off my yoga mat.
was passed over.
Can you please get off my yoga mat?
Simeon and Levi, Leah's second
What is it that you desire?
also
I'm trying to do yoga here. You want to do downward facing dog with me? Yes, is that what you would like to do?
After their sister died,
You're burping. Okay, let's talk to the people because have a seat over here because I don't want your booty meats on the mat. Okay, there you go.
Genesis 49.
Have a seat, buddy.
5-7.
Have a seat, big
This
buddy.
prophecy was fulfilled
Sit
when the
down.
tribe of
Prince, sit.
became one of the smallest tribes.
Sit,
and
buddy.
was eventually absorbed
See,
into
this is my buddy Prince.
and the tribe of
He is a
Leah
big dog that purrs.
the tribe.
He looks dangerous,
Leah's fifth and
but
sixth
he
son,
purrs like a cat.
Issachar and Zebulun also played important
And he can
roles
knock you
in the
over.
formation of Israel.
And if I really wanted him to bite really strongly,
At the time,
he could. But we never really worked on that.
32, while Zebulun's
But we worked on this.
and became known for their maritime skills and trade. While these tribes are less
And sometimes he goes where I want him to go, and sometimes he goes where he wants to go.
overall strength and
But in the end, he moves slow enough where I can either accommodate him and he can accommodate me.
It's profound. Despite the
He know I love him and he loves me, so sometimes he gonna stay where he's supposed to be, and sometimes he gonna try to get on my mat with
The
me.
story of the 12 tribes of Israel
Ah,
is a testament to
Right
God's
there.
faithfulness and his ability to use even
Right there,
the most
buddy.
difficult circumstances.
Yes, I love you.
Leah's role in the formation of the 12 tribes
I love you
reminds us
too.
that God's plans often unfold in
Happy-
ways
I-
that we
sit.
cannot expect.
It's Easter, guys.
This story is a
You gotta share the
powerful
spotlight.
example of how God
Like the mirror?
uses anyone
Yeah, there's a mirror right here that you guys can't see, and he likes looking at himself in the mirror.
purposes. Leah, the unloved wife, became the mother of a nation. And through her, the promises made to Abraham were carried forward into the future. Leah's spiritual legacy is one of the most remarkable aspects of her story. Though she was often overshadowed by her sister Rachel, Leah's place in the biblical narrative was one of great significance, especially when it comes to the lineage of Jesus.
Oh my God!
The
Okay.
fact that the Messiah came through Leah's line, rather than Rachel, is a powerful testament to God's
Oh,
grace
that's
and
it.
his ability to
Ah,
elevate
sit,
the overlooked
sit.
and the marginalized.
Sit. Sit, sit,
His
sit.
son Judah became the ancestor of
I need to think about something.
the greatest king of Israel. And from David's line came Jesus, the Savior of the world. This is a detail that many people might find
Ah,
surprising.
sit.
The woman
Stay.
who was less loved and less desired by her husband was chosen by God to be the ancestor of her Redeemer. This truth challenges our human notions of favoritism and worth. Reminds us that God's ways are not our ways.
I need to think about something,
Leah's spiritual journey.
and I want to talk to
From
you
a
about
woman
it
seeking
and you.
her husband's love to one who finds
But I have
her
to think
identity
about it and
in the
meditate.
purpose of God.
And you guys are my meditation though.
Since she left through her children.
So if you leave,
While
then
Rachel
how am I
was the
gonna
mother of
meditate?
Joseph, who saved his family during the time of famine. It was Leah
I
who
know.
became the mother of the tribe of Judah,
Okay, let me wipe your
from
eyes.
which the ultimate Savior would come.
Ah, pretty.
This aspect of Leah's story
Stay there.
reveals a shocking truth.
Stay there.
God often chooses to work through those who are rejected,
Stay.
overlooked,
Back up.
and marginalized. Leah's story is not just about a woman who was unloved by her husband. It is about how God sees and values those whom the world might ignore. It is about how God can take what is broken and despised and turn it into something beautiful
And so
redemptive.
I can control my
Leah's
dogs
legacy is also evident
with
in
just
the role her descendants played with
a
Israel.
little bit of gentle attention in the right
The
place.
man after God's own
And they
heart
stay calm
was a descendant of Leah.
and happy.
David saw
If I do this long enough to heal,
and his covenant with God all
and the meditation helps their rest in the digest system, especially when they're awake. Because being awake means that more of your consciousness is up and activated while you're subconscious. It's good. So you're learning to be able to be still and be peaceful and to heal and to feel good without being active, without moving your whole body, so that the body parts that feel good on the inside can vibrate, and you can do like a dog that goes,
unexpected and even scandalous circumstances to bring about his purposes. Leah's spiritual legacy is a testament not determined by how others see us, but by how God sees us.
You see my buddy over
It
there.
shows us that God's plans are often different from our own.
I can just lay him down now.
They are
She
always good.
is a little bit more active.
In the lineage of Jesus,
This is Megan.
a powerful reminder that God's purpose
Princess
is
Megan. Have a
fulfilled
seat.
in
There you go, baby.
regardless of their
She is very, very pretty and smart and very active. But she
lasting impact of her life.
has no cares.
Leah was buried in the cave of Macpelah in heaven, the burial place of the patriarchs. This detail might seem minor, but it holds profound significance in understanding Leah's place in biblical history. The cave of Macpelah was the family tomb that Abraham purchased as a burial site for his wife Sarah. Genesis 23. It later became the burial place for Abraham, Isaac, and Rebekah, and eventually Jacob himself. The fact that Leah, and not Rachel, was buried in this honored place alongside the patriarchs is a detail that speaks volumes about her status
Oh!
in God's plan.
Oh!
Along with while Rachel was Jacob's beloved wife, Leah was given the honor of being laid to rest in the family tomb.
Oh my God!
Leah in the ancestral burial site can be seen as a final acknowledgement of Leah's importance and the role she played.
Oh my God!
Jacob's burial of Leah in the cave of Macpelah was not just a matter of convenience. It was
I just got the Jacob. Oh my God!
and in the history of Israel. Although Rachel had captured Jacob's heart, Leah had captured the heart of God. Her burial in the family tomb signified her rightful place among the matriarchs of Israel. Leah's final resting place also symbolizes the fulfillment of God's promises to her. Throughout her life,
Oh my God!
love and recognition, and in the end, she received it in a way that was far greater than she could have imagined.
Happy Easter, everybody!
Ensured that her name and her legacy would be remembered for generations to come. Leah's story is one of quiet strength, perseverance, and faith. Though she faced rejection and heartache, Leah remained faithful to God, and He rewarded her in ways that went beyond her immediate circumstances. Her descendants played crucial roles in the history of Israel, and through her life, the world received its Savior. The story of Leah is a reminder that God sees and honors those who are often overlooked by the world. Leah's life may have been marked by struggle, but it was also marked by God's faithfulness and grace. Her legacy is one of eternal significance, as she became the mother of the tribe through which the promises of God were fulfilled. In the end, Leah's story is a powerful testament to the truth that God's plans are perfect, even when they don't align with our expectations.
Oh! Oh my God!
All of history. And her story continues to inspire and encourage those who feel overlooked or unloved. If Leah's story of unexpected redemption and divine purpose resonated with you, don't miss out on more inspiring biblical insights by subscribing to our channel. Hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated on all our future episodes. Join us
Oh!
gems in Scripture and discover how God's plans for us are far greater than we could ever imagine.
Oh! I have a dream. I have a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. The thing that I love that I've trained my dogs to be able to do is I can go from any voice to any sound and put them to sleep or wake them up just by my mood, not my volume. Now my mood there was, "Wah!" So Prince is up. I have to use her name to wake her up. Or I could do it without it. I just raise my energy level and she'll, sometimes the name will work, and mostly it's the energy level, or the affection. She loves affection. He loves affection too. But he moves when or where I want him to sometimes. Hey, He does not respect boundaries very much. She does extremely well. She's fast and nimble. Respects boundaries. You tell her where to go and where not to go, she goes there and not there. Him, he just wants to know if it's going to break something. If it ain't going to break nothing, he'll bump into it. He don't care. He wants to go where he wants to go. But where he wants to go is where I am. So I know this big Negro can bust through a wall if he wants to, but he doesn't, because I taught him respect everything. But if I ever needed this Negro to bust through a wall to come get me, it would take too much for me to be able to walk him through that. Right? Yeah. Have a seat. Have a seat. Thank you, buddy. This looks like a vicious dog. Can be taught to be a vicious dog. But the dog, if you know how to treat it right, behaves like a cat. Or sounds like one. And I can put him anywhere and you would never know where he's at. Because he's just big and cool. This is the muscle. He smells everything. Eats what I tell him to eat. Does what I train him to do. This dog is amazing. Super dog. Finest technology. Over here, beautiful. She's just pretty. Women love this dog because her eyes are gray and green, and her name is Megan, like Meghan Markle. I call her Princess Megan. This is the prettiest dog on the planet. So if you actually check his papers, his name is Prince Harry. And her name is Princess Megan. Okay. They're so very cute. They make my life so happy. Megan. Yeah. Thank you. That is her favorite thing, to jump up on me. That which doesn't happen very often. So she feels a little nervous, and now that I gave her some permission, she wants to go where she normally couldn't go, that Prince was able to go to. Over here. Over here. No, you sit. Prince, sit. Megan, off. Megan, off. Off, 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 off. Thank you, baby. Thank you, baby. Sit. Thank you. So, in life, hopefully you can get your dogs to a place where you can calmly and peacefully just move them around with your voice and your energy and your pace, so that they work with you. So I can record my yoga and do my yoga live, and my dogs can watch me, and you guys can watch my dogs watching me do yoga. Because I make things peaceful. That's what I was made to do. That's what I was made to do. I can make friends with everything. Sit. Sit, buddy. Sit. Thank you. I love you too. I love you too. I do. I love you. I love you. I gotta do. Can I do what downward facing dog? So I should, check in. Can I do pigeon pose? The birds like that. Can I do pigeon pose? You just turn your butt towards the pigeon pose? Okay. Pigeon pose is apparently boring to him. Pigeon pose puts him to sleep. Pigeon pose opens up my hips. Also, it allows me to loosen up my upper back, my middle back. And I use my strength in my hands to push up and lift up. Strengthens my arms. It allows me a really good stretch in IT band back there that goes. There's some tissues and sinew and all kinds of stuff that runs down that back channel that goes to different places. So you've got the endocrine system running back there, you've got oxygen that's flowing through the body, you've got water, you've got blood, and it's all pumping out. And the cleaner your body is, the easier it is to deliver stuff to different parts. And the cleaner you eat, rather than processed foods, it makes it easier for the body to look at the native foods that it wants to put into the right places in the body. Problem with processed food is the more processed it is, it's more processed and less nutrients. Body needs certain nutrients in order to build back new stuff. Body can build almost anything. Body is amazing. You give it some stem cells, which we do every morning. We call them eggs. And you put some stem cells in your stomach and say, hey, here's protein, here's a little fat, here's some other stuff. Now, this was going to turn into a chicken. Can you turn this into meat? And your body says, oh, sure, yeah. Eggs are good. If you put the right kind of eggs are good here. And in fact, the truth is, eggs are one of those universal translators. Everybody loves eggs. Everybody loves everybody else's eggs. Either to eat them, or if they find out that they can make something similar to them that ain't exactly them. Access to them eggs become premium. That's why on Easter we celebrate Joseph. All the Josephs. Easter, Passover, Ramadan. Because those are the big old gatherings where everybody goes to church. Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter. And we can see who owns what, who flips what bill, and who has to go where. Because Mother's Day is for the moms. Father's Day is for the biological fathers. Back in the day, who knows who that is? Especially, I think people want to get back to them days where you didn't know, but Mr. DNA has made the game a little bit like social activities. Like, no, we don't do that no more. Because children used to be a blessing for the entire village, but now the system of America has made children a burden for the entire system. So instead of a family seeing a child as something that will bear fruit one day and seed that will be able to grow into trees or plants or whatever God needs in the ark or the Garden of Eden, we've turned our children into weeds. We don't care for them. We don't water them. We give them just enough to survive and then say, grow up. And whatever you become is where we will put you. But we have stripped you mostly from your parents because both of your parents are working. So Joseph is the coach. Joseph is the stepdad. Joseph is the lady down the street. Joseph might be those two aunties or those two uncles that are best friends, that ain't married, know each other's secrets, all the way down to the end. But they have decided to do something that they don't have to do. To go out into the game of life, start over, and say, let's do it. I know that was a deal because I screwed up the deal. That's what, the first Joseph screwed up the deal. Second Joseph held the whole deal together. First Joseph had to learn a real hard lesson after his brothers taught him about what happens when you're the favorite of mom and not the favorite of dad. There's some other Bible lessons that teach you when you are the favorite of the kids, but not of the parents. There's some other Bible lessons that teach you how to behave when you are a sister, how you are a brother, the story of Boaz and the story of Ruth, the story of Ruth, the book of Ruth. The story of a mother who lost her two sons, who took in the daughter-in-law. And she got the daughter-in-law to marry one of the wealthiest men in their village. And that man named Boaz begat, I believe, Jesse. Jesse beget somebody, and that somebody beget David. There's a bunch of begets. Baguettes, begets, whatever you got to spell in French, because Wimbiana is an alien. Whatever you have to spell in French, that. So yeah. A lot of that probably sounded like a little gibberish. And I'm going to write it all down. But I'm sure that there are some people that are watching. And they're trying to figure it all out. And they know a little bit more than I know because they know the significance of this day. And many days and many realms and many galaxies. But if somebody is taking the time on this day to look at me, then I must be doing something really interesting. Now, that something could be that I've got two big giant snoring dogs. Or it could be that on Easter Sunday, Passover Sunday, whichever day, you can't tell anymore because the calendars are all kind of thrown off and you never know whose holiday and where you're supposed to be at, which is supposed to be. It's the game. Holiday's supposed to be fun no matter what goes on. And it's supposed to be an easy way for anybody else to get in. If you know all the songs and all the rituals and you know how to sit there, if you don't know all the songs and the rituals, but if you know how to sit there, you can get a free meal. And if you know a few of the songs and the rituals and you get a free meal and you actually say something interesting, somebody might try to hook you up with somebody. And that somebody could be anything. So, happy Passover, happy Easter, happy Ramadan. I appreciate the sacrifice of the Harvard Angel credit line to the information that must have cost. The one who sees all, but is no one, saw that. Saw a lot more. And he knows that if you transformed Optimus Prime's foe. The real G's noticed that pause was me figuring it out so that I can say it. And they know how to turn letters over just like that. So whether we're playing dominoes or rolling dice or blocks, cops and robbers, or we're playing Minecraft for real in the middle of the desert, where around us it's like other stuff, but we playing actual Minecraft. Moving inch by inch over a little block of real estate that everybody has a claim over. Because it seems like every few years, in our time, human time, something shows up when stars and stuff all align and everybody knows. But that's old technology for us. Somebody else. The source, the force, God, the Almighty, Most High, the ultimate shot caller. Shot caller that goes through all the books, knows all the clues, knows the questions and the answers. There's not a book you can hide from that. Because that one would say, y'all try to hide them 7 seals of Revelation. Y'all better do a better job than having 6 easy pieces hanging out at the bookstore. With that, I'll say enough. Somebody's probably chat GPT that up and said that was the most careful and beautiful way that we can understand that somebody knows about the meaning of this day and the sacrifices that are made in the name of Joseph. Sometimes Josephs try to sneak in some secret missions, but they always leave bug in the code so you know. Because yeah, Joseph may, he has to keep truth, but everybody know it's pretty honest Joe. You need to tell when you out. You don't do it often enough.